From his insane fighting style that has people cowering, to how he's beaten some of the greatest featherweights of all time. Here's why fighters are terrified of Alexander Volkanovski. Starting with his fighting style, because this is one of the biggest reasons he's so terrifying. Volk uses a combination of different martial arts techniques, and he's trained super hard for it. His base fighting style, which is his striking, comes from his Muay Thai training and his boxing skills. The Great is known for his devastating punches and kicks. This is demonstrated by his insane knockout power. But what really sets him apart is his defensive grappling. Volkanovski trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo, and he uses these to defend against takedowns as well as submissions. He's even escaped some of the trickiest submission holds with his defensive grappling prowess. All this is quite remarkable when you consider his size and weight. Alex uses positional control to gain the upper hand in fights, land punches, and then look for a finish, which has worked like a charm so far. But when Volk uses both his striking and grappling skills at once, it makes him almost unbeatable. His opponents have a hard time getting close enough to him to land strikes, because they're being taken down by all kinds of weird throws and sweeps. But he completely switches the game when he's on top. That's when he uses his ground and pound to wear down opponents and land vicious knockout blows that have made him what he is today, which is one of the most feared fighters in the promotion. He's been dominant from the very beginning of his UFC career. You rarely see the guy struggling against any opponent, and he has an unbeaten record in the featherweight division. You could say that he lost against Islam Makhachev, so he's not as dominant as people think he is. But if you watch that fight, you'll know how good he was against the Russian. He was super close to winning that fight and becoming a double champ. A lot of people still believe that the judges robbed him of a win. In all of his UFC bouts to date, Volk has shown his superiority in striking accuracy, power, and grappling. Basically, everything you need in order to become a great fighter. But that's not all. Volk takes it one step further with the fact that he shows no clear signs of weakness. I mean, how could you plan a fight when your opponent has no weaknesses? You don't know what strategy he'll come up with in the fight, or what strategy you should use to defeat him. This is why he's still the #1 pound-for-pound fighter, and why no one's willing to fight him. Kamaru Usman was the #1 pound-for-pound for quite some time. Can you say that he had no weaknesses at all? No way. Sure, there's no doubt he's a tremendous fighter, but you can't really say that he's a man without any weaknesses. Despite his unreal grappling skills, we've seen him get out-wrestled inside the octagon. He was knocked down by Gilbert Burns in their fight, plus, who can forget his 2 brutal losses against Leon Edwards? Volk, on the other hand, appears to have 0 weaknesses in his game. We've seen him outstrike some of the best kickboxers in the division. Plus, he's also only been taken down a handful of times in his entire career. It's so difficult to achieve that kind of reputation in the UFC. But Volk did all this without any problems. Because of his sensational grappling defense, the Great survived and thrived on the mat against Brian Ortega, who's arguably the most dangerous submission threat in the featherweight division. Volkanovski appears to be as unbeatable as a UFC fighter can get at this point. But have you ever wondered what makes him so good inside the octagon? A lot of credit for this goes to his rugby background. Oh yes, our 5'6" tall superstar has a background in one of the most ruthless sports as well. No wonder he's a force to be reckoned with inside the octagon. Before he was an international MMA superstar, the Aussie carved out a reputation for fearlessness in rugby league. He took on opponents much bigger than him and still won. His teammate from the Warilla Gorilla Club spoke highly of his size versus strength advantage on the field. He said Volk would just walk through players with ease, and he had no fear, no matter how big they were. Even if someone twice his size started picking on him or tried fighting him, Volkanovski would clean them up. This fearlessness is what has propelled Volk to the top of his division in the UFC, and there are no signs that he's ever slowing down. I mean, the guy's still in his prime, and he has a few good years left in him too. Alex recalled a fight from his rugby days on the Joe Rogan Experience. He said he was up against Shrek, who was the biggest player in the league. The guy stood at 7 feet and weighed 150 kilos. Despite this, Volkanovski had no fear of taking on the guy, and he jumped on him and started punching him in the face. Yeah, Alex did lose that fight, but it only made him stronger for what was to come next. And what came next was destruction. The guy dominated every weight class he fought in. Volk's long been a feared name among the UFC fighters, and that's because he's the closest thing to an unstoppable force in the sport right now. Not only is he immensely courageous and skilled, but he's also incredibly versatile. Most people know him as the featherweight champ, but what most of them don't know is that he's fought in a higher weight class before. The Great started his MMA career as a welterweight, and then dropped to 155 pounds for his sixth fight. From there, Volk bounced around between 155 and 145 pounds, before settling as a featherweight in 2015. But when he first arrived in the UFC in 2016, he started as a lightweight and won on his debut. This is an incredible feat of strength and versatility, and it only adds to the aura of Alexander's greatness. His ability to compete and thrive in multiple weight classes suggests that he's the very definition of a pound-for-pound great, and he's definitely the kind of opponent that no UFC fighter would like to take on. I mean, not only has he fought in higher weight classes before, but he's also dominated fighters there. Apart from his fight against Makhachev, of course. That fight puts a huge dent in his greatness, but apart from this, he's a true champion. Plus, you can't accuse the guy of ever putting in a dull and boring fight. Volk's always full of energy, and he's always looking for options to end the fight as quickly as possible. The Great is one of the most entertaining fighters on the UFC roster, but why is he so dominant and entertaining at the same time? It's because of his endless cardio. Volkanovski never gets tired. It's like the guy's carrying an extra pair of lungs with him. You'll never see him out of breath. Even if a fight goes down to the wire, Alex will still be full of energy and he'll be throwing punch after punch at his opponents. I mean, how can you not be scared of someone who never gets tired? Fighters try a whole lot of things on him. They try to hit him with leg kicks and body kicks to somehow wear him down, but they're unsuccessful. They can't seem to bring him down, and that's one of the reasons why no one wants to fight him. But is it the biggest reason, though? Volk has beaten some of the greatest featherweights of all time, and that's the biggest reason why fighters are terrified of him. You could say that Alex hasn't quite cleared out the featherweight division yet, but it's only a matter of time before he does that too. The Aussie has yet to face the likes of Yair Rodriguez, Josh Emmett, and Arnold Allen, but considering the form he's in, he can beat all of them easily. Volkanovski has wins over the two best fighters to never win the featherweight championship. I'm talking about Chad Mendes and Brian Ortega. The guy has beaten the legendary Max Holloway 3 times in his career. And how can I forget his dominant win over Jose Aldo? I mean, these 4 fighters are arguably some of the greatest featherweights to compete in the UFC. And our guy here has beaten all of them. So there you have it. From how he's beaten some of the greatest featherweights of all time to his insane fighting style. This was why fighters are terrified of Alexander Volkanovski.